In the summer of 1994, a group of 6 friends set out on a weekend camping trip in the remote wilderness of the Black Ridge Mountains. The group consisted of Mark, the de facto leader, his girlfriend Sarah, their friends Jake, Emily, Chris, and Lisa. They were all experienced hikers and campers, drawn to the area by its rugged beauty and the promise of solitude. What they didn't know was that the Black Ridge Mountains had a dark history. Decades of hikers had gone missing in the area, and locals avoided the woods, whispering about a curse tied to the blood moon. The group arrived at the trailhead on a Friday afternoon, their backpacks loaded with supplies. The hike to their chosen campsite was grueling, taking them deep into the forest, far from civilization. By the time they reached the clearing, the sun was setting, casting an eerie red glow over the trees. They set up their tents, built a fire, and began cooking dinner, laughing and joking as the forest grew darker around them. As night fell, the atmosphere changed. The forest, once alive with the sounds of birds and rustling leaves, fell silent. The only sound was the crackling of the fire. Mark noticed it first. "Does it feel too quiet out here?" he asked, glancing at the trees. The others shrugged it off, but Sarah admitted she felt uneasy. "It's just the woods," Jake said, trying to lighten the mood. "Nothing to worry about." But as the hours passed, the unease grew. Around midnight, they heard it. A low, guttural growl coming from the trees. Chris grabbed a flashlight and shone it into the darkness, but the beam revealed nothing. "Probably just an animal," Mark said, though his voice wavered. They decided to turn in for the night, but sleep didn't come easily. The next morning, they woke to find Chris missing. His tent was empty, the zipper torn open from the outside. The ground around his tent was scuffed, as if he had been dragged away. Panic set in as they searched the area, calling his name. They found his flashlight 100 yards from camp, its lens shattered and covered in what looked like blood. "We need to get out of here," Sarah said, her voice trembling. But Mark insisted they stay and search for Chris. "We can't just leave him," he argued. Reluctantly, the others agreed. They spent the day combing the forest, but found no trace of him. As night fell again, they returned to camp, exhausted and on edge. That night, the blood moon rose, a rare lunar event that bathed the forest in an ominous red light. The group huddled around the fire, too scared to sleep. Around midnight, they heard it again, the growl louder this time, accompanied by the sound of snapping branches. Jake grabbed a knife and stood up, his eyes darting around the clearing. "Who's out there?" he shouted. The response was a blood-curdling scream, Chris's voice echoing through the trees. They ran toward the sound, but it led them deeper into the forest. Suddenly, the scream stopped, and the forest fell silent again. That's when they saw it, a figure standing in the shadows, its eyes glowing red. It lunged at them, moving faster than anything human. What followed was a night of unimaginable horror. The creature, a twisted humanoid figure with elongated limbs and razor-sharp claws, picked them off one by one. Jake was the first to die, his throat torn out before he could even scream. Emily tried to run, but the creature caught her, dragging her into the trees. Her screams echoed through the forest until they were abruptly cut off. Mark, Sarah, and Lisa managed to make it back to camp, but the creature followed. It tore through their tents, shredding the fabric and scattering their supplies. Mark grabbed a hatchet and swung at the creature, but it dodged with unnatural speed, slashing his arm with its claws. Sarah and Lisa tried to fight back with knives and fire, but the creature was relentless. By dawn, the forest was silent. The campsite was a scene of carnage, tents destroyed, the ground stained with blood. Mark lay unconscious, his arm mangled, but still alive. Sarah and Lisa were gone, their screams still echoing in Mark's mind. When he finally woke, He stumbled out of the forest, barely alive, and made it to the nearest road, where a passing driver found him. Mark was hospitalized for weeks, his body covered in wounds. He told the police everything, but they dismissed his story as the ravings of a traumatized man. A search party was sent to the forest, but they found no trace of the others. No bodies, no blood, nothing. The case was eventually closed, labeled as a tragic accident. The truth years later, a group of hikers stumbled upon a cave deep in the Black Ridge Mountains. Inside, they found human remains, skulls, bones, and tattered clothing. Among the remains were items belonging to Mark's friends: Sarah's necklace, Jake's watch, Emily's hiking boots. The discovery reignited interest in the case, but no explanation was ever found. Locals still avoid the Black Ridge Mountains, especially during the blood moon. They say the forest is cursed, home to something ancient and malevolent that preys on those who venture too deep. As for Mark, he never returned to the woods, but sometimes, on quiet nights, he swears he can hear the growl and see the red glow of the blood moon in his dreams. And that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did making it. Also, let me know in the comments, what's the creepiest camping story you've ever heard? I'd love to read your stories.